Welcome to the Mike on Much podcast. I am your host, Mike Veerman, and I am here with my friend and trusty producer, Max Kerman. Max, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty well. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Missed you on the weekend.
Likewise. This is actually a very exciting show, Max, because we have Edgar Wright on. We have the director of new film, Baby Driver.
Which you saw.
I did
Sneak peek.
I did. We'll get to that in a bit.
Did you bring your camera into the theater and bootleg
I
it?
filmed the whole thing, and I've already uploaded it online.
Classic Mike.
We'll never get a press screening again. But how have you been? You were just in Cincinnati with the boys in the band.
Yeah. So the summer is here, and we are mostly working on weekends. We have the week off to play on Pete Rose and the Gamblers. And
you know that famous song by Loverboy, Everybody's Working for the Weekend?
Yeah.
When I was younger, I always thought it meant everybody was working on the weekend. Like, everybody's working for the weekend. I was like, why is it so happy if you have to work on the weekend?
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun.
No. And then I realized the reason everybody works during the week is for the weekend.
Yeah.
Did you always know that?
I did know that. I understood this. But there are a lot of other songs, though, which I totally misunderstood. I can't think of anything right now,
right?
But which I totally got wrong.
But you and the Arkells are working.
We're working on the weekend.
On the weekend.
On the weekend.
Yes.
So the band drove to Cincinnati, which is about 8 hours away.
Yeah.
And there's a festival called Bunbury. And it's cool. It's a cool festival. And the thing about our band is that we had a lot of doors open for us in Canada sort of immediately. And we were very lucky for that.
Yeah.
So we got to play kind of like high profile shows right off the bat. And in America, it's taken a little bit longer. But in the last couple of years, we've finally gotten some of those chances. So like last year, for instance, we did Lollapalooza and Firefly Music Festival, and this year we've done Coachella, we did Shaky Knees. Bunbury is one of those festivals that is on the bucket list. We did Sasquatch a couple weeks ago as well, and Bunbury is like the big festival in Cincinnati, which is right near Kentucky. And I've sort of developed this idea that I think we should play as much as we can all the time, especially if we're going to be driving 8 hours to go play one 30 or 45 minute set. Let's try to add in another show.
Oh, I see where this is going. It's like, we got to go to Cincinnati anyway. It's like load up on the shows.
Yeah. And the promoters usually love this idea. Our agents have to do a little bit extra work, but they like it. Our management, everybody's up for the work because they know the more we play, the better it usually is for the band. So we asked to play like an after party in Cincinnati because we're like, we're going to be there on Saturday night. We play Sunday afternoon. The promoter says, okay, yeah, we actually have a venue that you can play. We'll call it the official Bunbury After Party. And we said, okay, sure, done. And we didn't really I think they sent over the specs of like what the stage looked like. I actually remember getting the email. I was on a plane. I was like, yeah, whatever. Yes. So I didn't really look too closely at the details. Now, the venue is called Jekyll. And I didn't know anything about Jekyll. But we got there, and it's right in the town square, but sort of in this very sort of like America Town commercialized part of the city. Because a lot of the rock and roll venues are kind of like in the newer, like gentrifying hipster spots. They're not like right in the downtown commercial core.
Sure.
So the venue was like
right next to an H&R block.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it was also kind of like if we were playing it like at an Earl's in Toronto.
Without the Earl's Girls?
No, there were kind of an equivalent Cincinnati version of the Jekyll Girls. But so we get there, and I'm looking around. I'm like, maybe there's a stage in the basement. Maybe there's a whole other room that I can't see. But it turns out the stage is this like basically like a DJ booth. It's basically a nightclub. During the day, it's a restaurant. In the evening, it turns into a nightclub. And the stage is probably about 5 feet deep, and I want to say 20 feet long.
Okay.
So typically, Tim, our drummer, sets up at the back, but there's no possible way that could happen.
Oh, so man. You had to go 5 wide?
We had to go 5 wide. But I was feeling so bad because I'm always the guy who's sort of like pushing for this stuff. And I'm sort of like, all right, guys, we got this other gig. Let's get excited. This is awesome. And we show up at this venue. And it's like, I was like, are we going to have to cancel the gig? Now, not only is the stage 5 feet wide, there's also a barricade at the front of the stage. And stages don't like on the stage, not.
Oh, so it's taking up some of your room.
You can't really see the lower half of our body, which is just very unusual if you're in a rock and roll band.
It looks like one of those Chuck E. Cheese stages. Like it was just your upper torsos as you guys perform.
Exactly. So I was like just feeling so shitty about it. And I think a lot of bands will tell you this. There is a trauma of your early gigs where nobody showed up that will always stay with you. So, and especially when we're going to America, I always just assume nobody's going to be there. And I'd say 15% of the time that's true. The other 85% of the time, the shows are great. So I was like, oh, this is going to be a nightmare. And I sent a text to the guys. We sound checked while people were eating dinner. And so we're making all this racket, and there's people trying to watch sports and eat their like chicken wings. And you're just like, just being so obnoxious. I mean, we did like half a song. Like, all right, this is fine. So anyway, I sent a text to the guys. I was like, I know the vibe stinks in there right now, but we'll do our best and we'll learn from it, and we'll carry on. And then actually, it was so nice. Nick sent me a private text, like outside the group message.
Your bass player?
Our bass player, saying, hey, Nick, he's like, hey, man, don't feel bad. You got to keep taking shots. And sometimes when you take those shots, you end up playing in a UFC bar. But it's all good. It's like we don't get anywhere without trying. I was like, Nick, I love you, brother. I needed that.
So Nick was positive.
So Nick was very positive.
How are the other three?
The other guys were good. Like, nobody was like, everyone was being an adult about it. But I know in everyone's mind, it was like, this is like, what the hell are we doing here kind of thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, show rolls around. It's like 11:30. It's an after party. And there was actually a bunch of people that came out to see us. And at this point, the tables, the high top tables that were previously used for eating dinner are cleared out of the way. There's a dance floor happening. And I could definitely tell some of the Arkells fans were like, where the hell are we right now? But because people were probably just drunk enough and the lights were off and they saw like instruments on a stage, it resembled a normal rock and roll show.
Right.
That no one really questioned it too much. So I took on the attitude, I was like, we need to make this into like a sweaty, dirty rock and roll show. We need to like pretend like we're playing at like the Silver Dollar Lounge in Toronto, make it like a proper show. So we kind of like launched into the set and people were really into it. And I was like jumping over the barricade. You can see a photo on Arkells' Instagram of me like literally jumping over the barricade. And I was sort of pushing people around and being really snarly, and people like seemed to really like it. And the funniest part though was like during our set, we're like singing one of our songs. At the back of the room, there's a bottle service happening where the waitresses come out with sparkles. Those what are those things called? Sparklers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's like a parade of waitresses with their sparklers, because whenever anybody orders if you've ever been to a club, this is what happens. You order a bottle and there's a parade of waitresses. Also, one of the waitresses that was there early in the day, she had like changed outfits and was like not wearing any pants anymore.
What?
Yeah, it was like kind of like a very like kind of see-through sort of thong apparatus. It was like that was the kind of place we were.
Cincinnati, man.
But anyway, so we finished the set. We covered Dancing in the Dark, and I got in the crowd. I was dancing with everybody, and I said on the microphone, I was like, all right, bring us over a bunch of those sparklers. We're not ordering the bottle, but we want the sparklers. So then all the waitresses came over with sparklers.
Really?
And were like dancing. And the people in the crowd were like a little bewildered. Sparklers at midnight when everyone's a little drunk are always kind of awesome no matter what, I think. And the show ended up being like super memorable. And our booking agent, Adam Countryman, was there. And he's like, I'm not just saying this because the venue's weird, but that might have been my favorite Arkells show of all time. And so we really turned the thing into like a very memorable concert.
Well, it was going to be memorable either way.
Yeah, and we
this
made it
ended up
into
being
a positive
memory.
Yeah, yeah. Like and also people after the show who I never met before were like, that show blew my mind. That's my favorite show I've ever been to. So anyway, I was proud of us. We pulled it off. And then anyway, the next day we played the proper festival set, and it was a beautiful day, a big crowd. And it was awesome. So we made the most of our time in Cincinnati, which was always the hope.
And it all worked out.
And it all worked out.
Got to have a positive attitude.
Exactly.
Things are going to work out, my man.
Yeah.
I was also in the States this weekend.
Yeah. Well, so you're doing something a little different.
Yeah. I was in Michigan, Midland, Michigan.
By the way, yesterday when I asked you, Mike, where's Midland? You're like, that's Midland. Like, where in Michigan is this? Oh, it's Midland. I'm like, but where is it? Because I'm interested in geography.
Yeah.
And you just looked at me like, me with maps, Mac. I don't know where it was. and you famously have a very poor sense of direction.
That is a fact.
You had no idea where you were going. You were just in the car.
I was just in the car, happy to go along. So this is the second year in a row I've done this. There's this big antique festival in Michigan, and I go with my friend Randall and his wife and their friends. And so Danica and I, we tag along. They've been doing this for years, but it's kind of like not like a traditional thing where you go down and like you just kind of antique. They like get two like big hotel rooms loaded up with American beer, Miller High Life, and they just have like the best sort of 3 days antiquing and then going back to the hotel, hitting the hot tub at the Holiday Inn or whatever the hotel was. I don't even know what the hotel was, Max. I don't know where Midland is. I don't know what the hotel was. I was just along for the ride. As far as antiquing, I literally got a Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady like basketball card.
Oh, that's sweet.
And it was to remind myself that if you have a good thing, don't mess it up, because those guys could have won a championship and their egos got in the way. So let's never let that happen to the podcast.
Yeah, never. No,
Okay.
we'll never do that.
And I also got this Michael Jordan basketball that says best team ever with the record that they had.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. So I thought it was a bit of a collector's item.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I got those two things for $4 American, and then I went to the trunk of the car and then just drank and sat in the sun. So that was my antiquing adventure, but Danica got lots of great stuff.
See, when we've toured in Europe, the hotel rooms are small and all the beds are single beds. And like the bathrooms are like 4 square feet. They're brutal. And so whenever we're there, we're like, oh man, I miss those big fat American beds. Everything in America is like awesome and big. I mean, it also has led to a lot of problems, as we know. There is maybe a gluttonous part of that society,
right?
Is that?
But I'll take the big beds.
Yeah, but the thing is, when you're
10.
down there and you're like, these beds are so big. It's like there's usually like a free happy hour where you're like going down the lobby and people are handing you like Miller Lights. What the hell's going on? You're like, oh, America, America. Yeah.
But we're both back in town. We're in Canada.
Yes.
It's good to see you.
Great to see you.
And today on the show we have Edgar Wright.
The J. Edgar Wright.
That's what you keep calling him. That's right, like J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah. When I was prepping for the interview, I kept on like referring to like the Bay of Pigs and other international.
You did all the wrong research.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to this interview in about 2 hours from now. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah. In the prep, he seems like a delightful guy. Hopefully he's in a good mood because he's a very charming British dude. And I have a thing for charming British dudes.
You really do. You love that accent.
Mm-hmm. The one thing I want to ask him, and maybe we can talk about this now for a second, is I'm really interested in sort of the class structure of British society. And because Brits really care about that, like whether you went to private school or public school. I think they call it state school and public school. It's like a different terminology.
Right.
And because I've read articles about how like people in the entertainment arts and who become successful, especially in music, all went to these private institutions, like these fancy schools, basically. And there's definitely a feeling, because I think if you look at like the top 40 of like the British charts, like even though private school kids only make up like 10% of the population, they make up 80% of the charts, which is interesting, which means that there's
a big thing about this, about basically every successful actor that's come over here, like your Benedict Cumberbatches, your Eddie Redmaynes, like all of these, your British actresses, they all come from really influential, sort of wealthy families.
So
because they can afford to pursue the arts.
Exactly. But what I want to get to with Edgar Wright is that his parents were like art teachers, and I think like.
So you're saying he's working class?
So I think I might be wrong, and maybe I'll be proved wrong, but that might be a topic for you to investigate. Or I don't know how you say to someone, so you grew up like not on the right side of the tracks, right? Or like,
right.
But because you don't want to sound like condescending or mean. But I think that it is an interesting conversation to be had, whether you came from a rich family or a working class family, and how that has affected your worldview and how that changed your path in one way or another.
Absolutely.
So can you ask that question somehow eloquently, in a way more eloquent way than I just kind of put it out there?
We'll see the vibe, Max.
Okay, figure it out.
All right, listen, we're going to get to Edgar Wright right now. All right, we're going to start rolling.
Let's do it.
Because that's how we do it. So I'm Mike. I'm the host of the show. This is Shane. He's our pop culture aficionado.
It's a bit of an exaggeration, but I just really wanted to be here for this.
Oh, cool, man.
I'm normally not in the interviews.
But you said you've been going since what, like 6:30 a.m.?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. I didn't know we started. Yes, I left the hotel at 6:55 a.m. this morning.
I saw you did a thing with Strombo last night.
Yeah, at the Scotiabank.
How was that?
It was great. I flew in yesterday. The Scotiabank, when I was here filming Scott Pilgrim, the Scotiabank was the cinema around the corner from my house.
Oh.
So I knew it very well.
You know, it's funny. We actually had, speaking of Scott Pilgrim, Chris Murphy from Sloan.
Oh, yeah.
We were chatting with him, and we actually got into him sort of helping everyone learn how to play, sort of look like they were authentically musicians.
Yeah, it was great. I remember fondly, there was like a crane shot. It's in the opening credit sequence where Chris Murphy would be sort of standing off camera, basically like acting out the song whilst the actors were doing it, especially for Mark Webber, who did not know how to play guitar and sort of learned his bits. So this is an amazing thing, is like not just doing the shot and the camera pulling back, but just having Chris Murphy like playing along to the music as well and acting it out was amazing.
He's just jamming out to the side?
He was jamming out. So it was like, literally like for Mark Webber, it was like, follow me, like do what I'm doing. And it's just there for sort of vibes. And he was like, sort of, so it's a funny thing of all the actors doing their bits, but also out of the corner of your eye, Chris Murphy, like really like sort of going for it. It was amazing.
Is that hard for you to cast an actor that's supposed to be, good at an instrument? Like, I mean, is it a thing where you would be like, maybe we should just get a musician?
Well, I think, most of the time, I think sort of like Mark Webber found it the toughest, actually. I think he was a complete novice at the guitar, so he learned what he needed to do with those songs. Alison Pill as well, like learned the drums for the movie.
He mentioned that she was really dedicated to learning those drums.
Yeah, I think she did a great job.
Yeah,
I think she really looks fierce doing it. A lot of the other people already played instruments. So Michael Cera is actually a good guitarist, and Brandon Routh also played guitar. So, those guys had already, done some of it. But, no, I don't know. I think you usually go for like the actor and then, get somebody like Chris who can like help, do band camp with them. So I think it was very funny, especially for the Canadian actors in it. Like sort of Alison Pill was like, Chris Murphy's our guitar teacher, or our drums teacher rather. Yeah,
I love Sloan.
Yeah,
I think Canadian institution, man. Speaking of music, I kind of want to start with the soundtrack for Baby Driver. I mean, for you, how does the process of choosing songs work? Are you sort of writing scenes with songs in mind? Do song ideas come when you're editing?
No, in this film, nothing came afterwards. It was all pre-planned because, as you see in the movie, the songs are sort of like featured in the movie as in he's actually listening to them and he's actually like sort of, lots of scenes.
All the shooting has to be planned around those songs and those beats.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but when you're writing, do you know the tune that you're going to use?
Yeah. So I wrote the songs into the script. So I think before I started writing, I maybe had like the 8 big songs, set pieces worked out, and I knew basically what was going to go with them. So it was like John Spencer Blues Explosion, The Damned, the Tequila cover, like Hocus Pocus, the Blur bit, the Queen bit, the Barry White bit. So you think of them in terms of these are the big numbers. And then when I wrote the rest of the film, I wouldn't start writing a scene until I had the right song. So I would literally sit there with my iTunes open and just be like sort of going through trying to find the right track for the scene. And I wouldn't write it until I had the right thing. And I'd say like from the first draft of the script to the finished film, I'd say 90% of the songs remain the same.
Did any of them have to change because of copyright or just...
Nothing was like, it was nothing like, oh, we can't afford Led Zeppelin or something like that. It was more the thing like sometimes like some dance tracks had samples that were unclearable. Like they had used a sample without clearing it with the original, and then if you're clearing it for a movie and it's going to be like in a movie released by Sony Pictures, those bands are like, yeah, no, don't put that in the movie because they think that they're eventually going to get in trouble.
Yeah, we didn't clear it originally.
Exactly.
Do you watch that show, The Leftovers? The Lindelof
I haven't.
show?
I'm not caught up on it. I haven't watched it recently. I haven't watched any of the third season. No.
Oh, very good. But they talked about clearance of music. They wanted to use a Wu-Tang song at one point, and that's the exact issue they ran into, where samples on samples from way back, and basically you just can't clear those tunes.
Yeah. I mean, in a couple of instances, there were about 3 different tracks, either by like dance or hip hop acts, and they just hadn't cleared the samples. And in a couple of cases, I went on Who Sampled and I just cleared the original sample itself. So there's one song on the soundtrack, Early in the Morning by Alexis Corner, which I sort of found that because it's like, oh, this is that bit in its original form. Well, let's just use this. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting, like you end up using like some rare grooves and like sort of jazz songs and stuff because like those were the original samples.
Yeah. I think to touch sort of all aspects of making a film, writing, directing, producing, you have to be pretty meticulous and detail oriented. Are those attributes that sort of come easily to you? Are you naturally that way?
I think so. I think about things that I'm passionate about, I think are very specific and precise and meticulous. So I think, this is a movie that's sort of been building up to that. I've always done, scenes in my other movies or TV stuff where I've used music. And, if you think in Shaun of the Dead has that scene, the Queen scene, where they're like fighting the zombie to Don't Stop Me Now. And that sort of became the most famous scene from that movie. So it's something where I thought, wow, I'd already had the idea for Baby Driver. It's definitely pushing that direction. It's could I do an entire film like that, where like every scene is a different song?
Well, I mean, I guess getting into sort of the minutia of how you, I guess, build a film. You have Kevin Spacey, Jamie Foxx, John Hamm, sort of all in supporting roles. When you're in the early stages, are those sort of like wish list people? And how do you go about casting? Do you have personal relationships with them?
Well, in that particular case, the only member of the cast that I knew before the film was also the person that I wrote the part for, which was John Hamm. I wrote that part for him.
Knowing he would be in the film, or with him in mind?
You don't, in your mind, and obviously he's aware of it, but you never know when you actually get to make the movie. Is he going to be available, etc., etc. So actually, that was one of those great things, is that John had read the first draft of the script. John had even done a read-through of the first draft of the script back in like 2012. So then when it came to doing it, then it was great. It's like, oh, John's going to play the part. I think when I wrote the script, I maybe didn't think of actors as big as Jamie and Kevin to play those parts. So when those people came up and we went to them and they said yes, that was extraordinary. So it wasn't like I had a previous relationship with either of them. I met them through the movie.
Would you ever ask Kevin Spacey or Jamie Foxx for an audition, or is that when you get to a certain level, is that unheard of?
No, I think when you've won Best Actor Oscar, you don't have to audition anymore. I'm pretty sure, maybe, so once you've got the Oscar, no more auditions.
So, but John Hamm, you were able to?
No, John didn't audition either.
Oh, just like a read-through you just do with him?
Oh, yeah, he did a read-through where I finished the first draft of the script, and he came in to do a read-through with some other actors so we could just hear it aloud. So he was just helping out.
Right.
But no, he didn't audition either.
So how does a meeting like that take place? Do you you go for a lunch, or is it all done through intermediates? Like, do you need to pitch the film and be like, hey, this is kind of deal, or is Kevin Spacey
I think with in the case of Kevin, it was literally, I think at one point somebody else was doing the role and was interested in doing it, and then they dropped out because of a schedule issue, which basically means that they got offered more money somewhere else. and then Kevin Spacey, who previously had not been available, was suddenly available because he was supposed to be doing a play, and then he wasn't doing the play anymore. I think he's doing it right now, in fact. So basically, suddenly Kevin Spacey became available, and so somebody said, oh, Kevin's available, what about him for Doc? And I was like, great, do you think he'll do it? And I think within 48 hours, Kevin had read it, and I was flying to Baltimore to meet him whilst he was shooting House of Cards. And then we had like brunch and talked about the movie, and and then he was in.
Had he been a fan of your earlier work?
Yes, I wasn't aware of that. I think maybe I knew a little bit about that because I knew that he knew Simon Pegg and also Jessica Hines from Spaced. He had definitely worked with Jessica at the Old Vic in London. So I'd never met him, but he was aware of my of work.
Going back a bit, your parents were art teachers? I guess, how did their lifestyle and your upbringing sort of shape your early fandom and the desire to create for yourself?
Yeah. So my parents are both art teachers, and then, they were art teachers, and then they sort of dropped out of teaching to become artists and did, a variety of businesses with their illustration. And then they had to go back to teaching, I think reluctantly, when I was a teenager. But me and my brother had both did art, and they were very supportive of that. And, they very much encouraged, they knew that we were both interested in movies, so they encouraged us to, in that direction, even though they themselves had no, film industry connections or, basically started with, sometimes if you, with your brother or a sibling, you get a joint Christmas present.
Oh, yeah. I all the time, my brother.
So I think me and my brother got a joint Christmas and birthday present. So one present that's spanning four 4 different events.
4 birds with 1 present.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it was like a secondhand Super 8 camera. So that was like a sort of like a big present that was like spanning like sort of birthdays and Christmases. And that was how we started doing stuff. We started fooling around with this Super 8 camera, making like silly little shorts and stuff with my school friends.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is kind of something I wanted to get to. Like you're talking about the 1 present, your parents maybe having to go back and teach. We hear a lot about sort of the class system in England. And then maybe people that come out of there that become super successful, you know, read articles about like Cumberbatch or all these people, and they sort of come from this sort of more elite level. How difficult is it to sort of, I guess, make it in the arts if you're not starting there without those film connections, like you said?
Well, it's funny. I think sort of like both in the UK and especially here, I think people think that I'm like posher than I am. Maybe because it's just the name or something like that. But, you know, I went to the equivalent of like state school. I went to a comprehensive. I didn't go to a private school. And I think people just assume that I did or like I had some kind of connections, but it's not the case. So very proudly from like a state school. And, you know, I think the thing is that I probably snuck in. I went to art college. I probably snuck in one of the last years where they actually had student grants before student loans.
Ah.
You know, like, so God knows if I had actually gone to art college, and I'd probably still be paying back my student loan right now. So I feel very strongly about that in terms of like, I was very lucky to get like a student grant to go to college. Otherwise, who knows what I'd be doing.
Well, I think that's the more rare sort of path, right? Like you said, you get a grant and then now you're, you know, directing these major films and you've made it into this sort of elite level. Do you think that that's a path that can be followed by maybe aspiring directors or anyone in the arts that doesn't come from that upper echelon? Like you said?
Absolutely. For sure. I don't think, I mean, Quentin Tarantino isn't from a rich background. Quentin Tarantino
But he's not from England either.
True, but like he's not from money. And like sort of.
Well, I guess that's what I was getting at is maybe the differences between maybe like the American dream is essentially that, but then in England is it more difficult with the success of people in that other tier, let's say?
I'm not sure that that's necessarily true. Like, you know, Alfred Hitchcock, I think, was like the son of a market stall owner, I think.
Right.
You know, so I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think it really just comes down. This is going to sound cocky saying this, but I think it just really comes down to talent at the end of the day. I saw this thing once, it was really brutal, but it was the thing that so people don't want to hear sometimes. I saw Quentin Tarantino do this Q&A at Comic-Con, and this guy stood up and said, "Oh, Mr. Tarantino, I'm an independent filmmaker, and do you have any advice of how to get my movies seen? Like, you know, it's very difficult to get your work seen in the independent sector now, and what advice would you give me?" And Quentin Tarantino replied, completely brutally honest, said, if your film's great, people will see it. If you're not getting your work seen, maybe it's not that great. And I was like, ouch. But he was right, you know. So there is that thing, I think, sort of the main thing. And listen, I didn't have like an overnight success story. I made like a, you know, between like getting out of college and I made a movie when I was 20 years old. It was very, very silly. But then, you know, it's like another 10 years before Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
So it's not like sort of I was doing it the next year. I feel like, in fact, Shaun of the Dead, I got a second chance because I thought my first film that I did when I was 20 was no good. And, not good enough. It's actually, I feel better about it now, actually. I feel better about it now than I did at the time. But, you know, I got into TV after that. And then doing TV essentially became my college. It was something that, like, doing a lot of TV and doing a lot of comedy TV was like, I was basically like learning on the job. So then when Shaun of the Dead came around and we were trying to get that off the ground, it really felt like, oh, I'm getting like a second chance to make my first movie.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
As a kid, what genres were you most drawn to?
Oh, everything. I think when I was making like silly films with my school friends, I did a Western. I did like a superhero movie. I did a cop movie. I did like a horror film. I did little action films. So sort of a bit of anything. Usually because I came from like quite a rural area in the UK. In fact, where Hot Fuzz is shot is my hometown. And as such, there were always like things that would seem ridiculous being in like a quiet, sleepy English town.
Right.
So that's just something that, and I think this goes through like the movies, especially like Hot Fuzz, is like the inherently ridiculous notion of this big bombastic genre film in an otherwise sleepy kind of town.
Were you a Star Wars or a Star Trek guy?
I guess as a kid I was probably a bit of both. I guess
Thought you'd probably say that.
I was never a Star Trek: The Next Generation guy. Simon and Nick used to love that show, but I never saw Next Generation.
That's my shit, man.
Yeah, it's funny. Simon and Nick love Star Trek: The Next Generation, but I was always the original series kid, and I liked the films up to a point. But Star Wars was the first movie that I ever saw. I saw Star Wars at age 3. Seriously.
Do you recall that, though?
I do. I do remember going.
Do you have
to
a
the
memory
cinema.
from age 3?
I remember being in the cinema. It was my first time ever in a cinema. And I remember the ceiling of the cinema had stars on it, like glow-in-the-dark stars. So it was a very strange experience, just the ceremony of the lights going down and, the opening scene. So I do remember watching it, yeah.
Have you always had that editing style, that very quick, like Requiem for a Dream, Guy Ritchie style of editing?
See, I would call it Martin Scorsese style.
Right, yeah.
the same place that they got it from. But Walter Hill, in fact, as well. His editing style was very sort of influential to me. I think that's something that kind of, and Sam Raimi as well. That sort of came to me. I think I always wanted to do that style, but that sort of came to be a bit more when I was doing TV stuff. Like my first movie doesn't have enough of that, and actually was the biggest lesson learned on my first movie is it just didn't have enough time and therefore not enough coverage of shots to make it kind of go fast. So I think once I started doing TV, especially with Spaced, that kind of element started to come into it of the kind of the quick shots, and the quick edits.
Have you ever counted how many edits are in one of your films?
Yes. I can't memorize them though, but it's a lot.
Like
I remember on I remember that Hot Fuzz had like 1,700 shots and Scott Pilgrim had 2,000 shots. And I remember we essentially had finished the movie on shot 1,999. And I said, wow, we should just make up another shot. So we hit 2,000. So the last shot was completely fabricated. I was like, let's just do another shot because we were going to hit 2,000 and we ended on Slate 2000.
As a director, how collaborative are you with actors? Are you a my way or the highway sort of guy, or it's an open dialogue?
Well, I think the thing is that if you've written the script,
That's what I'm getting
it's
at.
less open to interpretation anyway.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're like a director and somebody else has written it, then, you're definitely, it's more up for discussion with the actors. But with something like Baby Driver, I wrote it and I'm directing it. So there's not really that much discussion in terms of what it's supposed to be, because the actor then talks to me as the writer and director. So I would say, definitely give people sort of license to sort of have fun with it, but it's not. But there's not a lot of deviation from the tone that I'm setting.
Right. Have you ever had a sort of a conversation where, they have suggestions on lines?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I won't mention any names. There's one person in one of the films that when we did a read-through was like way bigger than I thought it would be. And I was kind of surprised, and I sort of had to sort of, just quietly and diplomatically kind of just get them to sort of tone it down until it was kind of a piece with the rest of the movie. And it wasn't like it was bad or anything. It was just different and weird and not really in the tone of the rest of the movie. So some of those things you have to be pretty diplomatic.
Which movie was that on?
I'm not going to tell you. You're pretty able to figure it out, so I won't tell you.
I guess lastly, as we're wrapping this up, I mean, you have a lot of films and you've gone through this process. You do press, all this stuff. How much has it changed? What's the feeling as you're gearing up to release a new film, anticipating reviews, what people will think, what your peers will think, how it's going to be received? How do you frame that in your own mind?
I don't think it really gets any different. I mean, I think the thing is that I'm very proud of the movie, and all you can do really is just make the best movie you can, and just kind of get the word out. And anything beyond that is like sort of like is just in the lap of the gods. So I think it's something like where I probably get a little bit more relaxed now, because it's like I know, like sort of I don't know. I definitely probably feel a little bit more relaxed with this one, but I have no idea like sort of like how it will do or anything. But to me, like the sort of thing is, I did my like part of it, which is like I made the best movie I could, and I'm really happy with that. So it's like then it's like sort of the promotion thing is just like me and the cast getting the word out about the movie.
How close do you pay attention to the thermometer?
Well, when it's going good, you think it's pretty good.
Like it's,
Like, sort of
it's
like-
at 100 right now. So
I know it's crazy. I mean, it will never hold, and they never do. Not even Toy Story 3 stuck at 100.
Yeah.
No, yeah, Get Out also like sort of was 100.
Did
and then,
Get Out
like,
drop? It dropped.
It
one?
did, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, but listen, it's very nice. I can't complain.
Well, thanks so much for your time, man.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to everybody's favorite part of the episode, the dessert. We are here with Shane Cunningham, our pop culture aficionado.
Can we cross promote another podcast that I was on?
Of course.
Absolutely.
You were on another podcast?
Yeah. So it was cool. Like I was the featured guest.
Oh, wow.
So
That's exciting.
yeah, my friend Jared Diggs, he gave me my first shot, I guess, in show business. Like when I was 18, he had me co-hosting a show with him that was on before Saturday Night Live.
He's a friend of mine. I play basketball with him every week.
Exactly. So I think he wanted you because you're obviously a much bigger draw, and then I think he wanted Mike.
I consider JR a friend as well. I also play basketball with him.
Yeah, we're all buddies with him. But anyway, it was an hour and a half long interview, and for some reason, I was very good on that as a guest, like much better than I am here for some reason. I don't know
Were you
why.
talking about your life and work?
Yeah, I think it was easier because when I come here, I try to plan too much.
Yeah.
When you're planning, you're trying to remember, so I talk very slow, and I don't know.
Okay.
But anyway, check that out. It should be available at the time of this recording. If
It's
you're
up already.
listening to this.
Good.
Yeah, it's called J.R. Diggs, Man in a Van.
JRDIGS.
Yeah, it's a lot of me for an hour and a half, so
You know what?
brace
That'll
yourself.
be good, because I think we know you well and we have a sense of what your story is. But for people who just kind of casually listen to the show and just think you're a crazy person, getting some context for you will be very helpful. I think it'll shape you in a more encompassing way.
Yeah, we talk a lot about love in
There-
the episode.
there we go.
Yeah.
Are we in danger of losing you to JR Diggs podcast?
There was talk of having me on, but like I would never, like you said with Tracy McGrady and Vince Carter, we got to keep the team together. Anything that's going to break us apart, I'm not going to be a part of.
All right, set up our interesting and unique dessert today, Shane.
Okay, so like Max was just alluding to, some people think I'm crazy, maybe, and I think some people who work with me think maybe I don't know. Like I think of the people who sit behind me at work. Especially if they can see my monitor, like the way I work is in a very strange way. My desk is very messy. Like there's a workout bag, like basketball everywhere. There's like Ziploc containers filled with like food remnants. I'm very messy, and I'm always watching like To Catch a Predator at work or something, like while I'm coming up with creative ideas. It's just the way I operate in a way that makes it look like I'm absolutely doing nothing and kind of getting away with murder. But like if the boss walks by, I'll actually make it look like I'm working, which ironically I'm not working. And then it would, but like, you know what I mean? But I know optically.
Yeah, so when the optics look like you're really trying hard, you're
I'm
actually
not.
not doing anything.
But when it looks like I'm not working, I am.
Okay.
So the people who sit behind me, I think they think I'm a bit of a dumbass. At least that's always been my paranoid fear, which, I thought maybe I'm being delusional or overly sensitive, which I get accused of a lot. But I've heard this rumor going around, and a couple of sources have told me that there's been some, I won't call them disparaging remarks, but I've been talked about in a meeting. I was brought up in a meeting of a department I used to be in, and I was like, okay, I want to bring in the person who told me that they were in this meeting and get to the bottom of it and clear some things up too, because there's a little bit of misinformation going on.
Now, before you set this up, this is in direct relation to a very joyous thing, which is your 3 iHeartRadio MMVA award nominations. This is what all of this controversy surrounds, right?
It is. Okay, so
Wait, with the word controversy, like in relation to this conversation, is hilarious. But carry on.
well, I think if people are out there
Think of like the controversies of the world.
I think the idea of a guy like me who's perceived as maybe a bit of a
lazy butt,
not as creative as the other people in the department, maybe.
Yeah.
They might look at it like, oh, this guy's nominated for more MMVAs than Justin Bieber, and I'm actually doing work at work. So anyway, a person walked up to me, and this person has asked to remain anonymous.
Yeah.
So we're doing the witness protection treatment.
Could be a man or woman.
Could be anyone. And we're going to have this person explain what happened in this meeting, because this person may or may not have been in the meeting. So without further ado, take it away.
I'll cut the name.
So tell our listeners what you told me.
Set it up for us if you don't mind.
We had the meeting, and I wasn't even aware that you were even nominated. And it was stated that how can a guy like that be nominated?
What was say it the way you told me though? What was said in the meeting?
It was stated that a guy like that being nominated, especially when you work for the company, maybe it's not really justified in terms of the creative.
The way I
Wow.
heard it the first time that you told me was that you said the guy made an announcement during the meeting saying, I heard a rumor, and this may not be true, but Shane Cunningham is nominated for 3 MMVAs. Is that more accurate?
I would say yes.
Okay, why didn't you tell it like that?
You're being very dramatic.
One thing is if they say, how can a guy like that be nominated? It sounds very bad and derogatory. But I've heard Shane Cunningham's nominated for 3
Cunningham? My old porn name comes back to haunt me.
be nominated. It doesn't. The way Shane just said it doesn't sound as offensive to me as the way that you just described it, guest speaker.
Would you like another try to say it how it might have happened more accurately? The way you told it to me.
To be honest, I feel like I've already said too much.
Can you say who said it?
Unfortunately, I'm not able to.
Okay, can you nod at me? I'll just say some names. We're going to beep all these names, but it was wasn't it? All right, I thought so. I want to know, what was the reaction of everyone else in the room?
There are people that don't give a shit, and there are people that agreed. And I would say more so there was on the not giving a shit side in terms of the tone in the room.
How many people agreed, would you say?
A percentage, I would say about like maybe 25% agreed, but it was more of it was like a passive agreement, as opposed to let's go, kick Shane's ass. It wasn't like that.
So do you think the main issue is that dumbass Shane was nominated, or the fact that I'm a Bell Media employee and I was nominated?
I think it is the latter, to be honest.
That he's an employee?
I think so. As opposed to it being like a direct targeted attack, I think that it was the latter.
Were they disparaging his work?
No, we didn't discuss the work.
What was that the subtext, though, to them saying that? Do you feel like?
I feel like you want to push me in that direction.
No. I'm genuinely curious.
No, you're genuinely wanting to push me in that direction.
No.
I mean, I think what our guest speaker here is alluding to is that nobody really gives a shit about this whole thing. There's one guy who sits behind you. I mean, this might be a lesson in diplomacy where he probably just like the only thing he knows about you is that he looks over your shoulder and you're not doing anything. So
this guy's a very artsy
and if he
guy.
got to know you a little bit better, he'd probably understand your process and he would never bring that up in a meeting ever again. So I think that's really what this whole thing comes down to.
Right. Would you agree with that, mystery witness?
I think whatever Max says is correct.
That's it. That's all. That's our episode. Thank you so much to our mystery guest, Shane Christian Cunningham, our pop culture aficionado.
And of course, Edgar Wright. You can follow us at Mike on Much on Instagram and Twitter. The Mike on Much podcast is produced by Max Kerman, and I am your host, Mike Bierman. And this last bit goes out to at Jordan Mishi, and I'm hoping I'm saying that name right, on Twitter, who caught that last week the mixer accidentally dropped out our end bit. So, Jordan and everybody else listening, see you next week if we don't die on the weekend.